Hello and welcome to Create Now. Today on the Create Now, we're going to talk about a little bit more about recording. So tickle that subscribe button. We got the TikTok there, Vegan Steven Music YouTube page, and Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Vegan Steven Pod on Twitter, all that good stuff. So, mixers. Yesterday we talked about it. We're going to go through the old recap. So you got tracks. On each track you have volume, an input volume, which is the gain. Alright. On the gain you also have a clipping. So if the volume is too loud, say you have a keyboard. If you're playing the keyboard, you have it going into the input of the mixer, channel 1. You got the little gain pot there. If the gain is too, you need to turn it up so that you can hear it, yeah. And then, but if it's too loud, it's going to start clipping, and normally a yellow light will start bopping, or else a red light will start bopping, a clip light to indicate. Then, as you go down the channel strip, there may be things like a compressor and an EQ. If you're using a digital audio workstation, these would be in plugins that you can enable or disable. You may have a gate. We talked about the gates, compressors, loads. Then you have the pan pot. So that's where you want to put the sound in the stereo field, left or right. Most of your tracks will just be mono, which means there's just one track. You can put that left or right. Some instruments, however, are often recorded in stereo. So maybe acoustic piano, drum kit for overheads, and maybe toms, panning of the toms. Maybe you have a stereo pair of guitars. There's no need to have something in stereo if it's just like a monophonic instrument like a bass or something. Sometimes you might use stereo widening if it's a vocal or something, but some things with an orchestra, maybe a choir. Sometimes you can have some stuff like percussion in stereo and stuff, like an egg shaker going. Where is it? Between your ears or something, or some nice stereo claps. So yeah, you have your stereo track or your mono track. You're going to be panning that. Generally just keep everything straight. Then you go into your volume fader, or your volume, and your volume brings it through the mixer through to your master output. Your master output, your master fader, is the volume, the master volume for all your faders, because all your faders just go into this one fader. It's mixed down, summing mixer. Okay. So just like the input clipping we talked about on the gain staging, you can also have the input of your output of your master clipping. So you'll get indication lights anywhere. Generally it'll start flashing red, just a flashing light. You'll see a flashing light anytime that instrument hits, and often that can mean it's fucking clipping, which means distorting stuff's getting too loud. So what I'm talking about right here is called gain staging. Alright, so you're just making sure the signal is flowing through the input to output without the signal being degraded. So without you losing headroom, without you getting your dynamics squashed or interfere, or getting a load of noise introduced. So in that case you may bypass, that means disable your compressor, your EQ and everything. So all you have going on is you just have your your instrument coming in the input once again, you have a volume knob for your input. How loud do you want? Does it need to be turned up a little bit or whatever? Comes through, you might have your effects bypassed, that's your compressor, EQ, gate. Sometimes you'll have a spatial effect such as reverb or delay. Alright, there's a finite amount of plugins and all the rest of it. They often tend to just fit under those kind of categories, like even distortion's a form of compression and so on. Anyway, and a lot of effects are just combinations of EQs and compressors. Like a de-esser is like a compressor and an EQ put together. It's just wired unusually, so that any time there's it tells the compressor to kick in, and it lowers the volume of the vocal. But yeah, we don't have to worry about that just yet. We're just getting warmed up. So plugins, effects, lovely. Your input gain. So you have your signal coming into the input. You have your level, whether it's a mic input or can we get this going? Alright. So you have your inputs. Input volume going down the signal chain. So the signal chain is just when you stick it in and when it comes out and everything in between. So if the sound starts sounding all distorted, what's happening is your gain staging is all messed up. So do you know the way you might have heard of a distorted guitar? If you wanted to get that effect out of a mixer, you could do it by cranking the input gain so that the signal is coming in way too loud and the top of the dynamic range is just swiped off. So normally it goes up like and looks lovely and all the rest of it, but you're just cutting the head off it, like decapitating it. It's called a digital clipping in the case of a DAW. So if you wanted to use a mixer as a guitar pedal or something, you crank the input gain and lower the output. So you have it very distorted going into the channel, like or whatever, and then on the output you can turn down the volume, just have it coming out at a nice regular volume, 0 dB or whatever you want. So that's why gain staging is so important, because you often, for most cases anyway, you want to just have a nice clean signal coming in. You can get into messing with different textures by distorting the console or even the software, for example. It's a very useful tool. Many big mixers use digital clipping for snares because they like that white noise that just cuts through the mix for that one split second when the snare hits. So digital clipping is gorgeous, but in certain situations. So, but if you don't know what you're doing, just try to avoid any red lights. The meter, there's a meter, a UV meter or whatever, which jumps up and down with the volume or dynamics of the sound. You'll probably notice that jumping up and down. And just above it, maybe if you clap or something, it'll jump up and a red light will hit. And that's when you're reaching that digital clipping. Alright. So to stop it clipping, what you can do is use a compressor. So that means as it's shooting up, the compressor tells it to turn down and it won't hit that peak point, that red peak. So that way you can turn up the set, because it's not going up to in such a peak, it doesn't have such a wide dynamic range, you can actually make it much louder. because it doesn't have to clip the channel anymore. So channel, track, all similar words, alright? Channel strip, all these good things. So, another thing we have is phase, and that is a circle with a line through it. So you don't really have to worry about phase too much or really at all at this stage. It just creates the inverse of the wave. So if the wave is going up, it will make the wave do the opposite, so the wave will go down. And in theory, with phase, if you have two things the exact same, in theory, and you flip one out of phase and play the two at the same time, you'll have silence. Alright? So they cancel each other out. All sorts of variants are known or happen with this, like phase distortion, and if you don't have things in phase, you can mess up your low end. Sometimes phasing is acquired. How do you say that? People go looking for it. Something quality, a sought after quality, such as the guitar pedal phase 90 and Wurlitzers. The Wurlitzers for these organs. Is this not going? What's this? Keyboard. Maybe it's this one. No, not getting anywhere. Electronica. No, not working. Alright. So Wurlitzer is this thing where, like, you have a spinning speaker that spins around and it just creates quad chords, sorts of phasing. And to this day, they still use it on backing vocals. Okay. So gain staging. So you gotta have your input levels low, or at least not clipping, and just not clipping. Easy peasy. You got your mute button. Mute means if you press it, it'll stop it talking. And you got your solo button, which means you'll solo every other track in the session or on the mixer apart from that one track. It's like a vocal solo. If you hear someone singing in the choir, singing by themselves and the whole group stops, just that's what it is. When I hit that one, I hear what that sounds like. Alright. Solo button, mute button, phase, flipping the phase, so that's a circle with a line through it. Phantom power, which is plus 48 volts, which you only need to use if you have a hardware mixer or sound card and your microphone needs electricity. There we are. So a condenser microphone. So maybe if your microphone isn't working, it might need phantom power, which is also at 48 volts. Effects, send and return. That's how much of your signal do you want sent off to an effect, such as reverb, and then it will come back on that same track. So that can be very helpful if you just want reverb on certain things, like only the vocals and only the guitar, but you don't want it on anything else. You can send a split of the signal off to the effect and it'll come back. Okie doke. And that way you can use you can have reverb on all sorts of different tracks and different amounts with only one external reverb or one external delay. So it's very, very nice for creating a cohesive sound to put your whole mix in one room, as opposed to using different reverbs for every single instrument, which I personally do. But you can get painstaking and all the rest of it. And it can sound quite artificial if you use different reverbs for each thing, and also you use drains the CPU power and all that stuff. But mute, solo. You can solo multiple tracks at the same time and also mute multiple tracks at the same time. So there we are. Limiter is a compressor up to a very high ratio. So if your sound is too loud and you don't want to break your speakers, sometimes they have a limiter. And before the speaker's about to pop, it'll just turn the volume down on the sound so the speakers don't break. Limiters. They can also be used on the master bus to stop, so you can have a track very, very loud and compress it before it hits digital clipping, which would be at 0 dB. So you might have your output volume set to minus 0.02 so that the maximum volume doesn't hit the ceiling of distorting clipping. Alright, and that means you won't get digital clipping. So you have to preserve the integrity and dynamic range of your recording. Isn't that nice? Compressors and limiters overused can be heard or seen, listened to in radio. So you have a very large dynamic range of classical recordings, but when they're played on radio, you need the dynamic range squashed because people need to be able to hear the low, quiet bit as much as the loud bit. Why? Because it's all to do with people channel hopping and all this stuff, and they need to. Your radio station needs to appear the loudest and so on. It's all led on to the loudness wars and all these things. But the voice just needs to be heard. Think of all the radios. You don't know what radio your voice is coming out of. Could be tiny speakers, could be big speakers. So you're just gonna blast it through. And that's what, just literally force it through, and that's why they have such big strong limiters on radio, and so many. What the fuck? Things on radio. I think on this particular podcast I have. I only have one compressor, and on my output bus I have two compressors, a limiter, another compressor and another limiter with EQ in between. Now why would I have so many compressors? Because you only use like a little bit of spice. Just have a little bit of it. You only get them to turn down just a tiny little bit, and that way it sounds a lot more natural when it's heavily compressed, as opposed to just when it goes up, it just hits the wall and gets all mangled. So what engineers try to do is gradually sculpt the sound. In preparation for hitting that brick wall. And often you never even need to hit that brick wall because it's so well carved before it even hits it. So yeah, it's just about being loud. Louder appears to be better. If you listen to one song and you say, oh, this is fucking great, yeah. And then you hear another song that's a lot louder, you'd be like, whoa, this song is so much better than the other song. And if you go back to the other song that's really quiet, you might be like, oh, it just doesn't feel right, doesn't feel right. And it's just to do with the kind of psychological illusion of thinking louder is better. And that's why compressors are so confusing. We're trying to set them up because we gotta do A/B testing and so on. Listen to them in and out. So radio, heavy compression, heavy EQ, because people will be listening to this in all sorts of speakers. It's not like people are going to be listening to it in the room you recorded it in or anything. They're listening to it on like broken earphones. Maybe only one speaker works on their system. So you gotta slam. Just have that sound crisp and ready for market. Alright, so transport bar, that's the button with all your buttons on it, like record, stop, play, forward and backwards. Alright, so I am dipping a little bit in between hardware mixtures here, that's similar to recording consoles, and digital audio workstations. Now, all the digital audio workstation as a DAW is trying to recreate like a console, so they are the same thing. And instead of hardware effects, you have a thing called a plugin where you can use a compressor is like an app or whatever you want to call it. Alright, have a great day. And it's so confusing, so don't worry about it. I haven't even mentioned like impedance of different inputs and anyway, just look out for the clip and light. If something sounds very bad, maybe put a little bit of reverb on it, it won't sound so bad. That's it. Alright. Enjoy.